The word we're going to talk about today is academy. And you might be thinking, well, I already know what an academy is, so this can't be that hard, can it? But one of the things I'm trying to teach you is to see words as stories. Every word comes from somewhere, and if you start listening to the words, they can tell you so much. And this one gives me an excuse to talk about 3 different periods of Greek history, including my favorite villain, so indulge me for a minute. The word academy, if you can believe it, goes all the way back to the story of the Minotaur, a mythological Greek monster that was half man, half bull. It lived in a giant maze called the labyrinth, and every 7 or so years, depending on the story that you're reading, King Minos of Crete would feed 7, again, the number can change depending on which version you're reading, but King Minos of Crete would feed 7 of the best and brightest Athenians to this Minotaur. This all started because King Minos' son was killed in a hunting accident by an Athenian, so this was his way of exacting revenge. So the Athenians are obviously terrified every time there's a reaping, and yes, this is where the story of the Hunger Games originated. But during one of these reapings, there was a young man living in Athens named Theseus. And Theseus wants to be a hero. He's got a cousin, Hercules, who's already out there making a name for himself, and Theseus knows he needs to catch up. So when Minos' boats sail into Athens, and everyone else is trying to look invisible, Theseus volunteers as tribute. Everyone is like, oh my gods, Theseus, you are so sweet to sacrifice your life for someone else. And Theseus is like, no. I'm going to go kill the Minotaur, and you're all going to talk about what a hero I am. And they're like, okay, well, good luck. Bye. So Theseus gets to Crete, an island south of Greece, and the details here are kind of fuzzy, but somehow he catches the eye of the daughter of the king, Ariadne. And Ariadne is so struck by him, she runs up to her dad and is like, oh, daddy, please don't feed him to a monster. And King Minos is like, Ariadne, he deserves it because he's Athenian and they suck. So Ariadne decides to take matters into her own hands. After dinner one night, she stops Theseus in a shadowy corridor and passes him 2 things, a sword and a string. The next morning, the prisoners are marched into the labyrinth. Theseus has hidden his gifts underneath his cloak, but once they get into the labyrinth, he busts out his sword, busts out the string, and tells the other Athenians to get behind him. He starts unfurling the string as they're walking through the labyrinth, hunting the Minotaur. Eventually, he finds the monster, kills it, then uses the string to trace their way back to the entrance, because remember, it was a maze. And you might think I'm downplaying the action here a little bit, but honestly, I feel like this probably wasn't the hardest monster to kill. The Minotaur was used to being fed, basically. Here are your unarmed, terrified Athenians. And so the fact that Theseus had a sword would kind of be like if your sandwich all of a sudden had a sword. I don't know how prepared the Minotaur was for this battle. But anyway, the Athenians are like, oh my gosh, Theseus, what a hero. We love you, Theseus. And that's where the story of Theseus and the Minotaur ends for most people. But I am a completist, and you can probably tell already that I am not Theseus's biggest fan. After Theseus slayed the Minotaur, King Minos was obviously furious, determined to figure out who gave him the sword and the string. Ariadne knows she's this close to getting exiled or executed, so she runs over to Theseus and she's like, take me with you. And Theseus is like, of course, my love, you saved me. You saved us all. Marry me and hop aboard my ship. Everyone swoons over what a proper hero he is. So they're sailing home, Theseus and the Athenians and Ariadne. They stop on the island of Naxos and they bring her ashore, making sure she's super comfortable. She falls asleep while they're picking up food and whatever else. And when she wakes up, she sees Theseus's ship sailing away in the distance. Yes, my friends, Theseus ditched Ariadne on a random island. And to be fair, the Athenians claim this isn't exactly how it happened. The Athenians claim that Ariadne was taking a nap, and while she was doing that, a huge storm blew Theseus's ship away, with obviously all the guys inside of it. He didn't leave her on purpose, a storm just blew them away. But everyone else has basically accepted the fact that Theseus is just a terrible person. He never went back for her, that storm didn't last his entire life. Ariadne just wasn't useful anymore, so he ditched her. Now, there are a lot of Aeus names in antiquity, Theseus, Perseus, Odysseus, whatever. I used to get Theseus and Perseus mixed up, but now I always remember Theseus because I think of him as Theseus the pig. Theseus, T-H-E, Theseus the pig. I can't stand him. Things ended up okay for Ariadne, by the way. The god Dionysus spotted her crying alone on Naxos, and he's the god of wine and parties. So he goes down and he's like, hey, let's just stomp on some grapes. Life is good. They start dancing, get married. He actually brings her up to Mount Olympus, according to some versions of the story, which is pretty rare for a god to actually marry a mortal and immortalize her. So she did just fine. The pig, on the other hand, continues being an opportunistic fiend, and this is where the word academy is going to come in.